So thank you, Partha. So first of all, congratulations. Several years ago, big acquisition from HP side.
Thank you.
How does it feel being part of a bigger entity like HP? What was some of the integration issues that you perhaps had to look at from Aruba's side? HP, big box company, and then having to deal with more of a software approach, if you will.
Right. So I have a mic in there. Right? So when Aruba was acquired, this was in 2015, early 2015. We were about 2,000 people or so, and HP at that time, it was before HP split into HP and Hewlett Packard Enterprise, was about north of 300,000 employees, right? So we all had our what are we doing over here? But it actually turned out well for a couple of reasons. One, when the way the acquisition was structured, we took the old Aruba and the old HP networking, put that together to make the new Aruba, right? So in essence, we kind of doubled in size overnight, and the networking charter was driven out of this combination in here, right? And when we got acquired, the CEO at that time, Meg Whitman, and Antonio Neri, who is the CEO now of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, they made a commitment that they believe that Aruba was successful because of the way we did things, and they were going to let us continue down that path. And as long as we continue to execute, which we have, thankfully, they've kind of given us the autonomy to go push forward more into this market.
So, Partha, you put out a slide there which says India, now you're one of the largest, and companies now here providing this type of service. It's surprising that here you are, kind of coming in from the west side of the equation into India, right, and finding success. What is it that allowed you to make that transition into the India scenario and context that allowed you to be successful?
Right, mostly, India, we got the #1 share when it comes to Wi-Fi in enterprise situations. It's a validation of the strength of the solution that we build in there, right? I mean, ultimately, you've got to build solutions that deliver the value to customers, and the way we've done that is there's deep technology underneath the covers, but there are some customers that want to get down and understand the details of the technology, but a lot of our customers, they want to make sure that it runs effectively, so that they free up the time and want to focus on some of the newer initiatives that they're being asked to do there. So that approach to building solutions that work for customers, whatever your profile of customer is, right? If somebody wants to understand the technology, yes, you can do that. But if somebody just wants solutions that work and continue to work, that focus on that customer experience, on delivering that, is one of the primary reasons why we're successful.
Customer service, one of the key. So, you talk about Wi-Fi. When we think of Wi-Fi, the little router sitting in our home, maybe you go to work and you turn on your phone and, you log in and you have a local area type of network. I think you shared this issue of a big stadium, right? Being all of a sudden covered with, I don't know how many points, right? And carrying how many, terabits of it. So share with us, the whole application, if you will, taking Wi-Fi and putting it into a very, very different context, which many of us wouldn't even think would be an appropriate application.
Right, so the example that I used was Ohio State University. Ohio State University, we've been fortunate to have them as a customer since 2005, about 14 years now. This summer, they went in and upgraded or deployed Wi-Fi in their stadium. They've had Wi-Fi in their campus, in the larger campus, for the last 14 years. This summer, they went and deployed their stadium. The stadium is large enough to hold about 105,000 fans. And we went in and deployed a little over 1,000 access points. Primarily, it's a high-density environment. We went under the seats and deployed Wi-Fi, because that's the only way to get the kind of capacity that you need to satisfy in there. We've been doing these stadiums for the past few years, right? And it all started with one of the first things that we built closer to where our headquarters is in Santa Clara, called Levi Stadium. When we first did that, that was the first time we used a design methodology where we went under the seats and deployed an access point for every 100 or so users in there. And that was a huge success in terms of the amount of data that we were able to carry. That was the first point of validation that while the perception with Wi-Fi is, yes, it's unlicensed and it's all chaotic and so on, a well-designed Wi-Fi network actually can create a lot of capacity in the network, right? And what we proved out with Ohio State was two things. One, we kind of shattered records of the amount of data that you carry during the course of a game in a simple college football game.
It's not simple in Ohio, let me tell you.
It's not simple in the sense that,
when Ohio has a football game, right, the whole state watches, the whole country watches, right?
It's 105,000 people in the stadium, but the biggest reason why, the second point, which is not necessarily, everybody focuses on the fact that we carried 27 terabytes of data over 3 hours. But the reason why it happened was also the fact that we made connecting to the Wi-Fi network seamless. The user didn't have to make that choice. We kind of automated that connection process where a user's device using the credentials in their SIM card would automatically authenticate to the network and connect securely and seamlessly. Because we've done many stadiums and many games in there, right? Most of the time, the attach rate in terms of the number of fans who connect their devices to the Wi-Fi network is about 40%. Right? If you have 100,000 fans, we expect to have 40,000 devices on the network. In this game last weekend, we had about close to 75,000 devices in there. And I attribute that to the fact that we made the whole process of connecting to the network seamless. And this is why, yes, users do use their cellular devices, cellular phones, and the credentials contained in the SIM card on the devices, but we use those credentials to seamlessly connect them over to the Wi-Fi network. And this is the kind of process we need in order to realize the vision of 5G, because 5G is not a homogeneous network, right? It is going to be a collection of networks, but how do we make that seamless to end users so that they're not in the middle of making that choice between using this network or that network? Because if we put the user in the middle of that, we are now forcing them to understand not just technologies, but understand the situation that they're in at every moment in time.
So again, Partha, when you look at the Wi-Fi kind of normal concept, people begin to start complaining, thousands of users on Wi-Fi, my gosh, the speeds start coming down, right? So is this, at least how did you solve this issue in a large context like Ohio?
Correct, so two things. One is, that Wi-Fi as a standard is defined by 802.11 in the IEEE, and it's mostly, a lot of the standardization is focused on the Phi and the Mac, right, layer 1 and layer 2. We take the standards with our silicon partners that create the silicon solutions for us, but overlay that with a lot of Aruba's intellectual property to bring order in a very chaotic environment. But more recently, I'm happy to actually note that with the new version of the standard, Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax, as it is called in the technical community, we've done a lot of improvements and adoption of some of the technologies that came over from the LTE side. That gives us the ability to bring that level of determinism that the cellular operators have had benefit of the technologies that they've had, right? So historically, in the last 15, 20 years, if you follow the two worlds, the cellular world and the Wi-Fi world, we've kind of been creating technologies on one side and borrowing it on the other side, right? We adopted MIMO initially, that came over to the cellular network. LTE went farther and did multi-user MIMO that we've now borrowed over to the other side. Now, if you look at Wi-Fi 6 and LTE, from a layer 1, layer 2, they're very similar in there, right? And that allows us to now, at the standards level, get the levers to get order in a very chaotic environment. So, in terms of supporting density of users with Wi-Fi 6, we can do as good a job as what telcos have been able to do with LTE, but with the amount of spectrum that is available for Wi-Fi, that's what gives us the benefit, being able to create that kind of capacity that we did with Ohio State.
And so I'm going to conclude with this. One of the big concerns in Wi-Fi, using it in a mass scale in India, is the security angle, right? So, our government tells us, hey look, customer comes in and we want to track this person because there's some type of a legal enforcement issue. You're sitting there, I don't know what you said or whatever it is, right? How do we solve this problem in India, which is perhaps unique because in the US and elsewhere, nobody cares, right?
Well, that is not true. Everybody at the end of the day cares. But when it comes to security on Wi-Fi, there's two things, right? One is link layer security. How do I make sure that all the packets that go across the link layer are encrypted? And we've had some gaps in the standards that, one of the members of my team from Aruba went in and created this new security standard called WPA3, that more or less with WPA3 we can declare the end to unsecured Wi-Fi networks, right? By default, you're going to get link layer security in there. So that is one of the problems that we believe we've solved it at a standards level, and now WPA3 is seeing adoption in both the infrastructure and the device side. The second part of it is authentication, right? Is creating identity, and how do I now authenticate? Previously, those two were tightly coupled, right? If you wanted link layer security, you needed some kind of authentication, either credentials in the form of username, password, certificates, SIM cards, or pre-shared keys. Now we've kind of with WPA3 decoupled the two so that I can get link layer security, but then I can use any forms of identity to bring in the authentication onto the network. So given that India has done a wonderful job in creating national identity, right, in the form of Aadhaar, it opens up the opportunity for us to leverage it as a way of authenticating users as they connect to anybody's Wi-Fi network, right? And today, if you look at the cellular network, you need to have Aadhaar in order to get a SIM card, and that is where the tie-in between the credentials in the SIM card and the physical identity of the person is. We can kind of leverage similar mechanisms over here, either use the SIM card as a proxy for the Aadhaar, or use the Aadhaar itself as a form of identity to connect to the network. So that gives us the ability to get both link layer security in the form of encryption, but the encryption gets overlaid with knowing who the person behind the device that just connected to my network is. So we're getting all of the right tools. We just have to now create the solutions and get them adopted in the marketplace so that together we create the solutions that give the user a sense of security and trust, and yet at the same time law enforcement agencies the tools that they need to keep us all safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Partha Narasimhan, so please round of applause for Partha in terms of sharing his information. Partha, thank you very much.
Thank you.